We have a park
let's
between Florida and the other street because the park doesn't have a parking lot. So the only place we park when we go to the park is by the sidewalk, the street. So are we going to be left out with our parking space there as well?
let's see, do you know which park are you talking about, Sandra?
There is a park in between Florida and Jewel. I don't know the name, then Florida and Mexico.
All right, let's see if we can get there.
On both sides, and the west and the east.
Okay.
Oh, David, I think it's the Sanderson Gulch.
Sanderson Gulch.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. So keep going to the right there, I think. Yeah. So, Ryan, are you familiar with, what the treatment is going to be at Sanderson Gulch?
Yeah, so at Sanderson Gulch, and I apologize about the tech issues trying to get the dang roll plot up. So between Iowa and Java Way, right there at Sanderson Gulch Trail, there's protected bike lanes on either side. So if you scroll a little bit to the left, there you go, right in there. So there's protected bike lanes on either side. So there is parking there today. We'll have flex posts and rubber curbs there to reinforce safe travel there. Now, Sandra, to your question about parking, you could park on Java, you could park on Iowa and walk over. It's just the parking on Irving itself that would be removed in that stretch.
So I didn't understand. Are you gonna take that parking space away?
Yes, that parking on Irving will be removed.
No, that's not good.
So that particular stretch, Sandra, is where some of the highest speeds are. So, and also because of the sporadic parking, I've been out there observing, it's not completely parked all the time. It can be very wide. And because of the hill, it can be just frankly, not a safe place for people using the park, walking across the street, using the trail. So parking had to be removed to improve safety and to provide a separated place for bicyclists.
And how many bicyclists have requested this change?
That's a good question. We don't make plans to the roadway based on people, just like a critical number of people asking for changes. What we do, Sandra, is we look at the city as a whole and try to provide a network of streets. Just like a car basically could use every street in the city right now. It's very difficult for a bicyclist to move and have alternatives when one of their streets doesn't work for them. So we're trying to provide a network of alternatives and streets for bicyclists to use so that bicycling can become a viable alternative for people to travel. More people are, Denver is the 5th fastest growing city in the United States, and we can't just build wider roads and more roads for everybody in their cars to come here. We actually have to make it possible for people to not have to use a car in order for this to continue to be a livable, safe city. And so this, some of the issues you're identifying and addressing are some of that, these changes to the roadway that the city has to make to make Denver a place that it can continue to work for everyone, not just people who want to drive.
Then we need more parking space.
Or we get people to use other things other than cars so they don't need parking space. Do you see what I mean?
But it's hard for the elderly people to ask
Totally.
that for our church members. And
I totally get it. I totally get that. And so cars are always going to be part of our network, but they can't be the only part of our network. And so some people, as they age in place, will continue to have to use cars, and we totally get that. And people deserve to be in their car and be safe, and the same thing for someone walking to the train or using their bike. It's the same thing. We're just trying to provide options in a network.
The thing is that bicyclists are not requested.
Yeah, I understand your point, but that's not how the city makes
We
decisions.
absolutely are.
So we're just not, yeah, we don't, that's not how we don't wait for a couple of people to ask for things and then we do it. We take a big, broad perspective and then hear from people, like John and like you, Sandra, and try to make, a system that works for everybody. Well, thank you. We'll move on. Devin. Devin, are you with us? You're muted. There we go.
Yeah, I'm still here. I didn't have a further question or comment. Thanks.
Oh, okay. John, you're next.
So I was wondering, have you taken counts of bicyclists on the road now? Will you be taking counts of bicyclists after you put in this, and I'll be frank, inadequate intervention? And what numbers will you need to meet in order to improve the bicycling facilities afterwards?
Yeah, that's a good question, John. Let me make sure I understand. So first is, have we done bicyclist counts now? Will we do bicyclist counts afterwards? And what level of bicycling would we need to see to change the facility? Is that correct?
Correct. If you make these changes and you see zero difference in the number of bicyclists, will you be improving the facilities or removing the facilities? I don't know.
Yeah, so that's good. Yeah, good question. So what I typically say is that, we don't, the number of bicyclists isn't what merits a bike lane, and it's not what would disqualify. So just because people aren't using it doesn't mean we would remove the facility. We would want to look and we will evaluate these facilities and see what's going on here. I would say that the data that would lead us to upgrade a facility is if we see persisting speeds that exceed the threshold of a buffered bike lane and now go into a protected bike lane, then we would look at that. If we see like vehicle crashes or something like that, that shows that there's a persistent safety, something that we can document, then that would lead us to go and look at those specific instances. So I would say observed vehicle speeds and volumes is what is the major decision point for us to like upgrade a facility, but the city doesn't have plans on removing it just because a bicyclist isn't using it. Does that answer your question?
This street was originally planned for a protected lane the entire length, which was downgraded in order to preserve parking. And now it sounds like you're saying that it won't be upgraded unless the cars change their behavior, or don't change their behavior, as it were. This is unprotected door zone bike lanes. If this is a bicyclist facility, shouldn't the changes be made according to what bicyclists need rather than parked cars?
Yeah, so John, the response to that is that, we are following our guidelines in terms of where protection is needed and where a buffer is acceptable, for another facility where a shared lane is acceptable. At first glance, in planning phase, you just call an entire street one facility type because you haven't done that detailed block by block analysis. And so after we do that analysis and, really dig into the data, that's when we, and hear from the community, that's when we, come up with a more, like a nuanced design that shows like, what we found. But it's not that the volumes and speeds were equal across the whole corridor. If that were the case, then we would probably see a more consistent protected bike lane.
What speed of traffic is acceptable to put someone in the door zone?
So a door zone bike lane is a feature of the early design of bike lanes, and some of those still persist. Our updated standards and guidelines do accommodate for wider lanes that accommodate the opening of doors. And so I would say it is inaccurate to call everything that's not a protected bike lane a door zone bike lane. Jose.
Hello, and thanks for having this meeting. I
Sure.
have a couple quick comments and then a couple questions. So
Okay.
I guess my comments would be that, in my opinion, I understand there needs to be nuance to some of these designs. I don't agree with the decision to prioritize parking over protected bike lane facilities. Just if we're really concerned about the safety of people in Denver and increasing future mobility for people in Denver, I just think that a protected bike facility is what is necessary in roads like this. That being said, like I said, I understand the need for nuance. So were there parking studies done
Yes.
throughout and the places that retain parking, is there like a certain percentage level of parking that needed to be utilized in those places? Or I guess, how is that decision made on what needs to be retained for parking and what is okay to convert to a protection or whatever else?
Sure, that is a good question, Jose. So we did do parking utilization studies, and I would say it's not a one size fits all answer here. So there could be, like take this block here that we're looking at right now between Iowa and Java. It could have been 100% parked, but because of the safety issues, we probably still would have removed parking because of the speeds and volumes. Yeah, it's really like a context thing. You can also have like a very low parked and keep it because of other issues, like you need to do a different type of installments. So I would say the parking utilization studies are a helpful guide for us to help understand what will happen when we do remove parking and where it can be displaced to. But it's not a hard and fast guide that you look at this, you plot it on a map and say, okay, we remove it or we keep it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a bit more of an art than a hard science.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, my second question.
No, go for it.
And kind of building off on that, you made the comment earlier that the door zone painted door zone painted bike lanes were kind of an early design. I think most people generally realize that they aren't a good design. I'm talking, the narrow early ones, but there are still some on the street. And I guess my point is that a lot of these projects really do take a long time to be reevaluated and changed in the future. So is there a timeline for this project? If you've put this 60% design in, but the speeds don't come down, you still find some dangerous sections. There are some sections that really should have a protected facility versus what is put in. Is there any sort of timeline to reassess those areas, or is it kind of a nebulous sometime in the future?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jose. I would say, unfortunately, it's a little bit of both. So, for this project, we're looking at implementation in 2022, into 2023. Typically, what we like to do after it has been installed is that we find that behavior, it takes a while for behavior to normalize. After you get after you put something in the road, and so you want like a really good window for observation. So that could be like up to a year, which gives you like behavior in every season. So that's like big picture, like worst case scenario, like we're looking at like implementation in 2023, and then we have used a year to evaluate and learn. I would also say, that's like big picture things, but I would also say if there's like something immediate, pressing that is out there that is not working, we have the ability to go in and change it and modify that. So it's kind of a both ways.
Okay, thanks for the insight into how these decisions are made.
Sure. I think I have, I'm just going how I see it on my screen. So Sandra, I think I have you as next.
Yes, I am next, but Sandys has not participated, so I'm just gonna let him talk and then you can come back to me.
Okay. I think that's you, Sandy's iPad, but that's not your name.
That's,
But
yeah, it's Stan. Yeah.
I
Hey,
know it's
so-
Sam, but
Yeah, it's Stan. So you said a couple of things and then also Sandra's concerns. So probably very few people are aware that in Southeast Denver, there was 2 major east-west routes that went in last year, David. That was the East Jewel and East Dartmouth, very long corridors. And it ended up being pretty successful with the elimination of parking. And there was all kinds of discussion points, elderly residents, and if there's issues there, I guess there's waivers that can be, addressed and, allow them to park close by. But you mentioned behavior changes. And Sandra, here's one of the things. People are really resilient, and change is not a very popular word with a lot of people, but it's amazing. David, I don't know if you know of any changes that have been requested for East Jewel or East Dartmouth, but those are buffered bike lanes. And, you would think the world was going to cave in. It was going to be, total chaos. But I understand speeds have slowed down, cut-throughs have slowed down or minimized. And Sandra, a lot of these things were going to make your neighborhood safer for all users. And from a real estate perspective, the more that we can offer new homeowners options to walk, to use multimodal transportation, and to slow speeds down on our streets, it's better for everyone. But David, do you know of anything that came up on East Dartmouth and Jewel?
No, I mean, we got several people who said, I never would have said now, so I said it publicly, but I really do like how things have improved. So, typically what we find is that a lot of people are very, some people are uncomfortable with how things are changing, and then it peaks, right, as it constructs, and then we construct it, and then people see how it functions. And I would say the majority of people come to terms with the changes.
Yeah, and Sandra, I don't know what your use of a bicycle is, if you've even considered this, but yeah, we would love to see protected bike lanes that would make it, probably you would be more interested, your kids or grandkids or members of the church. And if we can create this environment that's just a lot more appealing, this is even good for people walking. It's going to slow the traffic speeds down, and there's just a lot of positive things that will come of this. And you'll be surprised, Sandra. We could convert you to a cyclist eventually, but it's good for
I will need the
everybody.
line from Garrison to.
Yeah. All
Thanks.
right.
Hey,
Anyway, so enough from Sandy and Stan, but I'm using the
Thanks.
iPad. So
Thank you,
thanks for letting
Stan. Hey, let's pause and go back to Elena, who, because we have about 15 minutes. Let's go back to the question about intersection treatments.
Great. Yeah, can we look at the one in Evans first?
Yeah, are you driving, Ryan?
I think Jason's
it-
still driving. I can jump on if,
Okay.
and it looks like Jason's there. So
All right, thanks, Jason.
he's a lifesaver.
Oh, this is Yale.
I just need to find it.
Okay. Gotta go a little further down. That's Florida, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi.
This roll plot's so long.
Evans. Oh, here it is. Sorry.
Okay. Now, I am more used to Evans on the east side, but I'm guessing it's also very busy on the west side. And so I kind of wanted to look at some of these intersections, and if y'all can go through on some of decision making here. And I'm also curious if there's a like a bike intersection light here. I've seen most of our bike intersection lights like on Broadway or downtown. I haven't really seen any on the west side or anything like that.
Yeah, this design doesn't require a bike signal. But what we do have is the green conflict markings, and that is a treatment that we do to give a visual, to attract drivers to the presence of people on bikes. It's designed for where we anticipate high levels of people biking, but also coming at intersections with higher volumes. So we also use it as an orienting when we see a change in geometry. So that's why it's at the diagonal, it helps people make that transition from they'll have to go either slightly north or slightly south. So that's what we have there.
Is there a pedestrian lead at the crosswalks?
A lead pedestrian interval, that is something we could look at. I'd have to, we'll take that in notes and report back to you. I don't know if we have an LPI.
Yeah.
I've noticed sometimes it's really helpful, even on a bike, if I can take
Agreed.
the lead, because then I can avoid people that are like revving up their car ready to turn, especially at like these large intersections. That makes me feel more comfortable on my bike.
Totally.
And related to the signals, while there won't be a specific bike signal here, and we're just not far enough along in the design process yet.
Okay.
On other corridors, we've looked at where bike detection technology would make sense, so the signal can change in lieu of just a vehicle sitting there if you're just on your bike. And same with LPI.
Oh, nice.
And same with LPI. We're not promising it at every intersection, but those where it makes sense and the signal, the existing signal could handle the addition of that kind of technology. We'll be looking at that. We're just, like I said, we're just not far enough along yet.
Okay. I was also curious, the Sheridan intersection that you discussed with Bates. Yeah. Because that's, I think, the other major one that you're you're covering Florida too, which Florida is always interesting street to cross. But then Sheridan's the big one,
Yeah. Do you guys have the roll plot for that one? For Bates, the Bates Neighborhood Bikeway?
I can pull it up here real quick, Jason, if you don't have it handy.
It looks like it's the other tab. It says Irving Bates.
Thanks, Elena.
I could be wrong, but maybe it's just
that might just be, I think that's just the slide deck.
All right. Sorry, I was trying to be helpful.
No, that's okay. Give me 1 second here. It's downloading real quick. I can just share the screen.
Okay.
There it is. Let me know when you can see this. I know it's going to be really small.
Oh boy, here we go.
Okay. It's up, but yeah, you got to zoom in.
Let's see. So we're looking for Sheridan.
Ivan.
I'm guessing it'd be all the way over since that's the county line.
Yeah, to the west. There it is.
So Sheridan is right here.
So,
We've got it zoomed
yeah,
in.
so it looks. Yeah.
Okay.
So it looks like we got curb extension, bump outs, a no turn on red, bicycle detection.
There's bike detection. Okay. There's not a bike lane though here.
Correct. It's a neighborhood bikeway.
Okay. I'm curious, did you only clock speeds here on Bates, or did you also clock speeds for cars kind of turning from Sheridan Bates, like that kind of interaction, or does that play into anything?
Yeah, no, typically when you're collecting speeds, you're trying to get free flow traffic. So you do it like at a midpoint or something, not like accelerating or things like that. So if you were getting a car coming from Sheridan and then turning onto Bates, you would capture it in mid block.
Did you get rates or speeds for people like driving past Bates on Sheridan?
I will have to get back to you in terms of like where, I can follow up with you, Elaine, on where we measured speeds.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just curious because I think we all know that Sheridan's crazy.
Agreed. Agreed.
And-
Yeah, but I would say, yeah, I mean, typically, just from like the vehicular standpoint, with what we have here proposed, it's going to make it much more difficult for someone flying around than to like just keep on going at the same speed on Bates.
And will there be a pedestrian lead at this intersection?
If there isn't already, we can definitely look at it.
There already is.
Okay, cool. Pedestrian leads at every major intersection to me is just like, should be a standard. It really helps us get out of the way of vehicles that are like ready to like keep moving. So I
Agreed.
appreciate
Totally.
that. I just wanted to look at some of the designs with you all and see what your feedback is and kind of see what you're doing in the major intersections, because that's always, as a cyclist, where I'm always the most concerned and alert is how do I get through these major streets? So thank you.
Sure. All right, Sandra, you're next.
Thank you. I just would like to hear about statistics, like what are your statistics on accidents on Irving compared to previous years, and where do you get this information from? Is can you also know if the people creating the accidents or speeding are from our neighborhood?
No,
If
you can't tell
not,
that.
why
can't
do
tell that.
we have to pay for it? Thank you.
Yeah, so we get our crash data from the Denver Police Department. And so I believe we discussed earlier, there were 15 crashes over the period of time, 2 of those being serious injuries involving pedestrians. We don't track whether, someone is from the city or not. We don't, frankly, it's, if someone is hit or someone's crashed, that's a problem, no matter where their car is registered. They could be registered in New Mexico and still live here. So, but I believe there's 15 crashes on Irving. Did I answer your question, Sandra?
Yeah, but what is it compared to previous years, and thank you. Is this a public information? Like, can we
Yes.
go to a page?
Yes. Mhm.
So-
Yeah. There's a crash data portal, and this is all publicly available data.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
Sandra, there's an existing conditions report that was put together that's on the West Denver Safer Streets website. Between 2015 and the end of 2019, there were 211 crashes on Irving. The way that the report details this, and again, it comes from the Denver Police Department. It doesn't detail out, which occur in which year. It goes into which vehicle crash type, so rear ends, side swipes, head-ons, things like that. Now, for more detailed, if you're looking for more so when they occurred, not necessarily how or where, that would be through that open data portal.
All right, John, bringing us home.
I just typed it all out. Maybe I can read it off. Let's see here.
Okay.
Nope, it disappeared. First, the original speed and crash study, I assume, was done corridor wide. And second, will the new speed and crash study be split into 3 to account for the 3 different redesign sections? 3, will the improvements from the middle section be held against the outlying unprotected sections, since people will naturally slow in the actual protected section? And then 4, the post and curb design along the protected section looks different than the design used in the recent 13th Avenue upgrade. I was wondering why that was, just out of curiosity.
So, I would say, John, when it goes back to evaluation, we will monitor at probably similar places where we did beforehand. So just for data consistency. And we'll obviously want to capture and make sure we're doing it in places throughout the corridor that give us a different perspective, in the buffered bike lane as opposed to the protected bike lane sections. So we'll do that. As far as the post and bollard design, Ryan, I would imagine that it's going to be similar to what's on 13th, with intermittent bollards and rubberized curbs.
Yep, very similar.
It's purely, I don't know whether on 13th it goes post curb post, and in the designs you showed it shows post curb. And I was just wondering if there was a reason for that.
Good question. I'm not aware of a reason, but yeah, not too sure. 13th and 14th might be a bit of a different animal given the traffic flows, the volumes there, as opposed to a corridor like Irving. But now, when we're looking at those rubber curbs and the flex posts, I can follow up on that, John, and get with you, let you know what that.
Yeah, it might just be a symbology issue, John.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we found our way through most everyone's hands. And unless there is a lingering question or comments, we can end a minute early.
I have one lingering question.
Yes, let's do it.
So I find many times on my bike when I'm trying to cross some major intersections that sometimes the light is really fast and there's not enough time for me to cross it.
Mhm.
It's like it feels like it's a 10-second light,
Mhm.
especially on these major intersections. I know that you all try to have efficient cadence of traffic.
Mhm.
But I also, kind of wonder if you all are taking into consideration the crossing time for bikes and, also pedestrians on some of these large intersections that maybe don't really give us a lot of time to cross.
Yeah, that's a good comment, and that's fortunately an easy thing for us to address through signal timing. So we can make sure that we incorporate that into the design package.
Yeah, and that's something we'll be looking at as we move through 60% and 100%. We'll ID those signals that we either hear do not have sufficient crossing times, or we observe not having those. And like David said, it's a relatively easy fix.
Do you all ever sit in like a wheelchair and see if you all can wheel yourself across in X time as like a demonstration for yourselves?
No, but I've suffered a pretty serious physical injuries before that prohibited me from walking fast, if at all. So I'm very, very familiar with that. I also had a brother in a wheelchair,
Okay.
so I'm very familiar with the issue for sure. And there's also guidelines on distances and making sure people have enough time. So thanks everybody. We are done here, and I wanted to thank you guys so much for your participation, your questions. This is definitely not the end of the discussion. If you guys have questions, please feel free to reach out. You can find all that information on the West Denver Safer Streets slide that was shared earlier. And I hope you guys have a good night, safe holiday season, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.